Welcome back, guys. We are ready for part 3 of lesson 12, which is our lesson on determining word meanings. We are on page 123 in our Ready workbook. So if you need to pause the video, get out your Ready workbook, go ahead and do that. Also, make sure that you have a pen or pencil, some kind of writing utensil. You could also use a yellow highlighter for this if it helps you to highlight stuff. I know that's good for some of us. So, once again, we're on page 123. When you have your materials out, let's go ahead and get started. So, the first thing we're going to do is rewrite the title of our lesson up at the top of our page. We know we do that with every new part of the lesson we have to do. So, the title of our lesson is determining word meanings. Okay, so now that the title is rewritten at the top, we need to kind of start breaking down the title so we can figure out exactly what it is we have to do. So, determining means that we are breaking something down. We're going to figure it out. So, we're going to kind of take a closer look at it to figure out what it is we're doing. So, determining below it, I'm going to write figure out because we are going to figure something out if we determine it. And word meanings, guys, we have three different types that we're going to look at. So the types, two different types. I'm thinking back to lesson 9. We have two different types of word meanings that we're looking at for lesson 12. The first type is figurative, and the second type is connotative. So, figurative word meanings usually deal with figurative language. We have several different types of figurative language. We listed um, those in the part 2, the one that we did yesterday on page 122. So, go over there, refresh yourself. I'll actually scroll up so we can see it. We've got simile, metaphor, personification, idiom, allusion, hyperboles. Those are just a few of the types of figurative language that we're going to focus on. Now, connotative, that refers to the feeling that's behind the word. Connotative refers back to connotation, which we know is the feeling behind the word. So, whenever we are working with figurative and connotative word meanings, we really have to make sure that we pay attention to the tone. We're going to pay close attention to the tone. And there are three different feeling words that we think about when we consider tone, and that's positive, negative, and neutral. Okay. And whenever we are also dealing with figurative and connotative word meanings in language, we need to think about word choice. Is the word choice strong? Is it weak? Is it somewhere in the middle? Word choice is going to help us figure out the meaning of those words, and it will also help us determine tone. So I'm going to make myself a note down here for strong and weak word choice. Okay. So now that we have rewritten our title and we have appropriately broken it down, we're ready to look at our directions and see what we're going to be doing today. So, our directions tell us that we are going to continue reading the poem. If you remember back to our video from yesterday, we're going to continue reading the poem. The title of our poem is Composed Upon Westminster Bridge. I'm going to make myself a note of that up here. Actually, I think I'll do it down below. If you remember what I told you yesterday, Westminster Bridge is a bridge that is found in London. And yesterday we talked about how the poem the poet pretty much he seemed to like his view from Westminster Bridge because yesterday we dealt with a lot of positive tone, positive connotation. So we're going to continue. So let's now that I have rewritten my title, let's continue looking at the directions. So we are going to use the close reading and the hint to help us answer the questions down at the bottom. So we have the close reading that's going to help us guide our reading, and then we have the hint that's going to help us with the question that we have to answer. So now we are ready to kind of look at the meat of the poem here. This is a continuation from page 122, like I've already said, the poem that we started reading yesterday, composed upon Westminster Bridge. So we need to go ahead and number our lines. If you remember me telling you yesterday, we numbered our lines, but we did it in increments of 5, remember? So we numbered line 5. So today we're gonna pick back up, and I'm just gonna go ahead and number lines. I'm just gonna number them all today, just so we don't get confused. Okay, so I've numbered our lines number 9 through 14. So the next thing we have to do, guys, we need to continue our rhyme scheme because I'm going to go ahead and tell you the rhyme scheme is going to differ a little bit from the rhyme scheme that we talked about yesterday. And just as a refresher, this is a lyric poem, right? And lyric poems deal a lot with patterns, rhythm, rhyme. So I'm going to make myself a note of that just at the top so I don't forget that this is a lyric poem. And I'm going to make sure I know that they deal with patterns, rhyme, rhythm. And if you also remember me telling you yesterday, lyric poems usually express the thoughts and feelings of the poet through the narrator. So I'm going to make myself a note of that too, that they express the thoughts and feelings. Okay, so we are ready to determine our rhyme scheme for these last few lines of the poem. And considering that it is a lyric poem, I'm going to think that there's probably some kind of pattern to these last several lines. There's going to be some kind of rhythm to it. So, and definitely some rhyme, right? Rhyme scheme definitely has to do with rhyme. So let's see if we can figure it out. Remember yesterday I told you to do rhyme scheme. You have to look at the last word of each line of the poem and refer back to the ones that come before it to see if it rhymes. If it's the first thing, you start with the letter A, right? Because we have to keep it in alphabetical order. So let's go ahead and get started with line 9. Our last word is steep. Well, since this is a continuation of a poem, we need to go back up to the section we looked at yesterday and make sure that steep doesn't rhyme with any of the words we looked at for our rhyme scheme yesterday. So let's look back. Does steep rhyme with fair? No. By? No. Majesty? No. Where? Hmm. Steep, bare, those don't rhyme. Steep lie, those don't rhyme either. Sky, air. So it rhymes with none of the words at the end of the lines from yesterday. So I know that this word for this rhyme scheme could not have the letter A or B. I'm gonna have to start with a new letter, and if we keep it going with our alphabetical order, what letter comes after B? Well, it would be letter C, right? So I'm going to have to start with a new letter because steep rhymes with nothing we've looked at so far with this poem. So I'm going to put a C beside steep. So next, I'm going to look at line number 10, hill, steep, hill. Those don't rhyme. Does hill rhyme with anything we've looked at already? Let's double check. No, it does not. So steep, hill is going to have to get another letter. And since we're keeping this alphabetical, letter D comes after C. All right, so let's look now at line number 11 with the word deep. So deep rhymes with steep, right? So that gets a C. Okay, next I have will at the end of line 12. Will, hill, those rhyme, so this gets a letter D. Next I have asleep on line 13. Asleep, Steep, deep. Oh, that rhymes with our C, so I'm going to give this a letter C. And last but not least, on line 14, we have still, still, hill, will. Those all rhyme really well. So this gets a letter D. So we have figured out our rhyme scheme for these last 6 lines. So our rhyme scheme is C, D, C, D. Or sorry, C, yeah. C, D, C, D, C, D. Okay, so that is our rhyme scheme. So let's go ahead and do a cold reading of these last 6 lines, and then we'll come back and look at our close reading. I want to just read through it once, and then we'll go back and do our close reading box. So I'm going to read it to you, and I want you to follow along with me. Never did the sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor valley, rock, or hill. Ne'er saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. Okay, so this wraps up Composed Upon Westminster Bridge. So now that we've read it through once, let's go ahead and do our close reading box. It's out to the side. Let's see what it says. It says that we have to circle the words in the poem that have positive connotation. And how do they build on the positive feelings created in the first stanza? And in case you didn't know, a stanza is a section of the poem. So we're going to have to go back and look at the first section of the poem. Okay, so just as a refresher, we are going to read this again, and this time we are going to circle words that have positive connotation, so that have positive feeling behind them, that make us feel good or make us have glad feelings. And then we have to think about how those words that we circled build upon the positive feelings that are created in the first stanza. So let's read through this time, and we're going to see what words you can circle, and we'll come back and do it together. So as I'm reading through the first time, circle your words, see what you can think of, and we'll come back and I'll tell you what I circled. Okay. Never did the sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor valley, rock, or hill. Ne'er saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. Okay, so hopefully you circled a few things as we were reading. So I'm going to go back through and tell you what I circled. So in line number 9, I circled the word beautifully. Beautifully has very strong positive connotation. If something is beautiful, usually we like it. It's pretty. We want to look at it. If it's beautiful, it gets a thumbs up. In line number 10, I circled splendor. Now, splendor, you may not know what splendor means, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you. Splendor means that it's magnificent or awesome. So it definitely has some positive feeling behind it. So I'm a little plus sign right there. In line number 11, I circled the word calm. Calm, if you are calm, it kind of means that you are at peace. And that has positive connotation. In line number 12, I circled 2 things. I circled glideth and then I circled sweet. So if something is gliding, it's kind of it's smooth, right? So like you could say like whenever I hear the word gliding, I think about like a swan gliding over like a smooth pond, like the smooth surface of the water, and that has definitely has some positive imagery behind it. And the word sweet is positive as well. We like things that are sweet, don't we? In line number 13, I didn't circle anything. But in line number 14, I circled mighty. Mighty has positive connotation. If something is mighty, it kind of makes me feel like that it's brave, it's powerful, it's awesome. And that has positive connotation behind it for sure. So now that we have circled the words that have positive connotation, we're going to go ahead and move on down to our question. And we have to circle the correct answer. So pretty simple, right? But before we look at the question, let's go and look at our hint, because when we have a hint, it's going to make sure that we know a few things that are going to help us answer the question. So we have to look back at the words that we circled. What do they suggest about the speaker's feelings. So we've got to decide how those positive words make us think that the speaker feels. So, do you think the speaker chose to use those words with positive connotation because they like the subject they're writing about? Did they choose those words because they hate the subject? I'm going to say the speaker probably chose those words because he likes what he's writing about. He's talking about the view of the city, view of London from atop the bridge, right? And he is choosing all these words that have very calm, peaceful, beautiful, positive connotation, right? So he definitely likes it a lot. So let's go ahead and look at our question and see what it's asking us to look for. So, based on the connotations of the words, such as splendor, calm, and sweet, what is the speaker's attitude toward the view of London in the morning? So, the connotation of the word, that's the feeling behind the word. So we have to think of the feeling behind the words splendor, calm, and sweet and determine what they help us know about the speaker's attitude toward the view of London. So let's look at those words splendor, calm, and sweet. Are those positive or negative? Do they have positive, negative, or neutral tone? Well, if you said positive, you were on the right track because they're all three of those words have positive feelings behind them. And they make us they give us a sense of peace and beauty, right? If something is splendor, it's magnificent, beautiful, awesome. Calm kind of makes us feel kind of serene. And if something's sweet, that's definitely positive. So it kind of gives us a sense of peace and beauty overall. So we have to think about how those words get interpreted into the speaker's attitude toward the view of London. So let's go ahead and start looking at our answer choices. So let's look at answer choice A first. He admires the peace and beauty of the city scene. So, do we think he admires it? Definitely, possibly, right? So, A seems like a good answer choice, but we can't automatically assume anything because we need to look at our other three first. So, let's move on to answer choice B. He prefers city sights to the valleys and hills of the country. So, in this answer choice, does it tell us that he prefers anything in the poem? It never says he prefers anything, right? And does it ever mention a valley or a hill that's in the country? No, he's talking about his view of the city of London from the bridge, right? So he doesn't mention valleys and hills. He definitely doesn't say he prefers them. So answer choice B is out for us right now. Let's move on to C. He wishes that the river would flow quietly through the city. So he does mention a river, right? But is his focus just on the river? No, he's talking about the whole city. The river is part of the city, right? But it's not his sole focus. And he definitely never says that he wishes that it would flow quietly. So he never says he wishes that. So answer choice C is out for us. So let's look at answer choice D. He hopes that the heart of the city will remain still and silent. Does he ever say that he's hoping anything or that he wants this to happen? No, he never says this. Okay, so answer choice D is out for us too. So that means the only one that's left is answer choice A. So only one that's left for us is answer choice A. He admires the beauty and peace of the city scene. And we can definitely agree that this is the correct answer based on the words he chose that have a lot of positive feeling, positive tone behind them. He definitely likes the city. He likes standing on top of the bridge looking at it, right? So, now that we have established that, let's go down to the show your thinking section at the bottom. So we have to explain how the speaker's description of the houses convey his feelings about the city scene. So we have to think about the houses that are mentioned in the poem. So let's go back up and look at the poem again and see where it talks about the houses. And that's going to be in line Number 13. He says, "Dear God, the very houses seem asleep." So he's talking about how the houses and they seem like they're asleep. So this is a hyperbole, right? Because houses, they're not actually going to be able, or oops, sorry, that's personification, not hyperbole. What am I talking about? That's personification, right? Because the houses can't actually sleep. I can't spell. But this is personification, guys. About the houses talking about how they are asleep. So let's go back down. So it's talking about how the houses are asleep, and we've got to figure out how that conveys his feelings about the city. And well, we already know that he feels positively about the city. So he likes the city. So we've already established that. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk our way through this, and we will discuss the answer in just a bit. So we've got to explain how the speaker's description of the houses convey his feelings about the city. So we already know he likes the houses, so we've got to explain how his description of the houses being asleep lets us know how he feels. So I'm going to give you an attempt to go ahead and come up with your own answer, and then we're going to come back and discuss it together um, in a separate video. In a separate video, because I'm gonna have this typed and we're gonna talk about it because I think that will be a little bit easier. All right, guys, so go ahead and attempt this on your own and come back and we will discuss.